Desert Summit, which is coming up August 31st. Brian, I'm going to let you run that.
Sure. This is just an informational matter. For those of you that weren't aware, we're having a summit at the State Bar on August 31st. Different organizations that are impacted by the lack of lawyers in these different communities. I think we realized throughout our study, we began this study back in June of 2022, that everybody is trying to address this in a different way. And it seems like there are a lot of different parallel tracks going on, and the summit hopes to bring everybody together and see how we can help each other out. So I think it's going to be a great meeting. Jimbo Perry and Marcy will be our MCs for the day. And Jimbo has already sketched out really a very compelling agenda for everybody just to hear the information, have an opportunity to discuss. I'm going to turn to Jimbo for some additional.
I just wanted to say it is co-sponsored by the Chief Justice Commission on Professionalism and the State Bar, so we're co-sponsoring the summit.
So Jimbo, you want to update everybody on your efforts on this?
Yeah. First, I would just say it is such an honor to be doing what I'm doing. I've been a small town lawyer for over 40 years, for 43 years. And I absolutely loved being a small town lawyer. I'll quote Cecil, my friend from Salisbury, who said he liked to help people not just with their cases, but with their lives. And what an honor that has been to be able to do for 43 years. And now I'm having a chance to have a little shift and to be able to go around the state. Before I figured out how to use, my wife told me I couldn't have a flip phone anymore in this position, and I had to get a real paid haircut. But before I figured out how to use my phone, I've been filling up notebooks with information I've gathered just from interviewing people like you all, like Alan up in Morganton, and many of you all as I've been around to see you. And every week I learn something new, and I am more, I guess, inspired to think about how we as a profession can really help address this issue. So yesterday I was in a courtroom, but it was a little bit different kind of courtroom because it was with a young man who had lived with my wife and I for some years. My wife has always said if we have an extra bed, we have room for one. So he was one of our ones who would live with us, and he had left to go start his own business representation. And the charges were dismissed yesterday.
Oh, yay.
After one person in particular that she was representing, she said,
oh, yay.
After one person in particular that she was representing, she said he's 59 and he's this and this. And then when the man spoke, he said, I'm 69. I'm not 59. She had done the best she could, but what could she do with 15 cases in one morning? Then I was with a judge last Tuesday, and the judge was telling me, she said, we just need more bodies to process cases. Well, I don't know about you all, but when I went to law school, well, I do know about you all, because I know you didn't go to law school because you'd done really bad in undergraduate school and you were just scraping by. You did your best in undergraduate school. And when you came to law school, you did your best. And we want to do our best, don't we, when we represent people, whether it's commercial real estate or whether it's parent defender work or whether it's criminal work. And we don't want to just be a body in the courtroom to help process and help go through this. Be a body in the courtroom to help process and help go through the process to move people along to the place where you can move cases. Yeah, we do have to move cases, and we got to figure that out. But we as attorneys, aren't we called to provide excellent representation? I'd like to read you one quote, and I wrote this sometime before. Some of y'all may have read it. It was a judge talking about Gideon versus Wainwright. This is the 60th anniversary of Gideon versus Wainwright. One judge said, that post-Gideon, many defendants were represented by walking violations of the Sixth Amendment. No constitutional right is celebrated so much in the abstract and observed so little in reality as the right to counsel. So I guess what I want to kind of communicate this morning is this isn't just about getting bodies into districts where there are not enough lawyers. This is about doing justice. Y'all will remember the verse that we've all heard, or most of us heard since we were kind of little. It talks about it's from the prophet Michael that says, what is required of us? What's required of us as attorneys? Well, it's to do justice. But it's also to love mercy and to walk humbly. And I remember my 40 years of practice, 43 years of practice very well. And I remember just being a body often. As I would get a plea offer on a Friday afternoon, and I would go in and I would see a young man who'd been in jail for 8 months who wanted to go home. And I would say, you can go home on Monday, right? But he can go home with a felony on his record, and he maybe didn't deserve a felony. So I want to suggest to us, just as we talk about access to justice, I want to talk about it in terms of equal access to justice. When I first started practicing, my mentor for some 15 years was a lady that lived in the projects, and her name was Miss Georgia. And Miss Georgia, I hung out with her every week, and she kind of taught me how to live in the community in which I was going to represent. And I said, Miss Georgia, how am I going to, how do I do this? How do I represent people that I really maybe don't know? And she said to me, I remember she said to me, just treat them try to provide representation for the way that you would want for your mother or your child to have. Trey got that kind of representation yesterday. And as a result of that, he's home this morning without a box on his leg. And so our call, I want to kind of try to raise the vision a little bit for us as a committee. They want to help people and they want to make a difference. Well, if the way in which I'm going to help people and make a difference is by just being a body to help process cases, I don't want to do that kind of work. But if we're there to provide excellent representation, holistic, excellent representation, then I believe we can provide those type services in cases like parent defender cases and public defender kind of cases in a way that will attract the best of the best lawyers. Let me just say, I've also found lawyers, I've also found everybody that goes to law school can be the best of the best in whatever field they're in. We develop this pecking order, don't we, when folks go to law school is that top 10% get the job, and they're the best of the best, and everybody else are kind of, you just kind of fit in where you can. But every one of us is called to a place where we can make a difference today, right? So we're excited about the summit that's going to take place on the 31st, and we are trying to put together lots of ideas, but the ideas, again, are going to be geared towards how can we figure out how to provide excellent representation. I primarily kind of focused on public defender kind of work, and but there's also the civil part of it. We heard from Josh Weaver. I'll stop here in just a minute, but let me. We heard from Josh Weaver. You remember back in April, he talked about that 50% of civil cases that aren't represented, and that's also a great big part of the issue. And anyway, we're going to get together. We're going to talk. Y'all come be a part if you can. But the end result of that meeting on the 31st is that we want each of us to have an action point. We want each of us in our own lives, in our own way, to try to be part of the solution. Darren was just sharing with me that they've recruited a couple of new lawyers that have come to Salisbury. And the way they did it was because Darren has been talking to them. I was talking to Robert Nunry's boss down in Moore County, the district attorney down there. Did you know in Moore County they have enough DAs? 38 of our 42 districts don't have enough DAs, is what they say. So I asked Mr. Harden, I said, Mr. Harden, why do y'all have enough DAs? How have you done that? And he said, I've got a long-term attitude towards recruiting. And I said, well, okay, explain that to me. He said, well, there was this guy named Robert Nunry who was a school teacher in Moore County. And I thought he'd be a really good lawyer. So I got to be friends with him. And I encouraged him to go to law school. And I told him if he came to work with me, we could get his loan forgiven. And I want you to know Robert Nunry is now the president of the Moore County Bar. And it's because Mark had it's not Mark, what's his first name?
Mike.
Mike, I'm sorry, Mike. Because Mike had a long-term vision to have lawyers in his community that would do excellent work. And Robert's doing excellent work. So what about you and me? Who can we identify that would maybe be a young person that should be a good lawyer? We for the first time in years in Lenoir County have got a more. Who heard Josh? Y'all remember Josh? You remember what he?
$100,000.
How much?
100.
No, it's more.
Million.
Next guess.
A million.
$1 million.
Million.
It was $1 million grant from their bar. They only have a state bar association of them. They got $1 million grant. He charges a bargain rate of $300 a month for somebody that wants to be part of his legal incubator. And that is pretty amazing, isn't it? For $300 a month, you could get 2 weeks of a boot camp. You could get weekly or every other week meetings with somebody who's going to help you in your practice. Well, there's a guy in North Carolina named Mark Atkinson from Durham. Mark graduated from Central in 2020. He's a third career lawyer. He first was in the Navy, then he was an engineer, and he apparently did well as an engineer and stopped being an engineer about 5 years ago, or maybe it's 7 years ago now, and became a lawyer. And he has this vision of doing legal incubators. He has 20 graduates from it now. This year he's got 9 people in his cohort. He does it on a budget of just under $7,000 a year. It's because he doesn't take any pay.